Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jim Rosner. I'm president of the European American Chamber of Commerce in New York, and I'm also managing partner of the New York office of Pepper Hamilton, a law firm. We're in the middle of a very challenging period in terms of security, trade, and relationships between nations. Europe is ground zero for each of these. Last year's national election reflected a growing populism throughout much of the world and a dissatisfaction with the status quo, catapulting parties to power focused on independence and sovereignty. Some of those in Europe questioned whether the EU still works for them. It is in this backdrop that our special guest, Michel Barnier, has an incredible, challenging task of finding a solution to the Brexit conundrum while keeping 27 countries generally supportive of the course of negotiations and the European project generally. To make things more difficult, just when the British government reached the so-called Chequers Agreement, providing for a close relationship in terms of trading and customs union with Europe, David Davis, Mr. Barnier's counterpart in the Brexit negotiation, and Boris Johnson, one of the protagonists in the Brexit referendum, quit their positions in protest, weakening Mrs. May's government and her ability to carry forward a coherent plan. I want to give special thanks to Mr. Barnier for taking the time out of his New York schedule to address our members, and with special thanks to all of you for taking the time to be here to listen to some of the very timely and important topics on the state of Brexit negotiations. This program has been made possible due to our special relationship with the EU delegation, which is supporting this event. We believe that Brexit not only will impact the United Kingdom and the remaining EU 27, but also the United States, as business leaders and governments strive to manage a very challenging trading environment. We at the EACC New York have been at the forefront of covering Brexit negotiations through our Brexit Working Group and our Brexit Programs series, first hosting former Prime Minister John Bruton, who is also EU Ambassador to the U.S., then Ambassador David O'Sullivan, and also João Val de Almeida, who was the EU Ambassador to the U.S. and is now the EU Ambassador to the UN. And now perhaps the most exciting conversation yet, and at the most exciting time, with Michel Barnier. As with all of our program, our goal is to provide information and understanding to the transatlantic business leaders so that an informed community can exchange with government leaders and provide a constructive dialogue. Once again, many thanks for joining us. It's now my pleasure to hand the program over to Michel Barnier, Chief Negotiator for the United Kingdom's exit of the European Union, or should I say potential exit based on Mr. Tusk's tweet last night. Mr. Barnier, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, James, for your kind words. And ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon to all of you. Thank you also for your presence. And thanks also to the Executive Director of the European American Chamber of Commerce, Yvonne Penninger-Rothschild, for inviting me. Indeed, ladies and gentlemen, indeed, it is a very timely occasion to talk about Brexit. I'm happy to be in the United States to make the European voice on Brexit heard. After Brexit, with 27 countries, 440 million consumers, and 22 million businesses, we will remain a major partner for the US and a global player. Let me now make a few introductory remarks. First, I deeply regret, as a politician, as a citizen, I deeply regret the United Kingdom's decision to leave the European Union. It is my conviction we are stronger together. Brexit will necessarily have a cost. the United Kingdom has decided to leave the European Union, to leave the European single market, and to leave the European Customs Union. This means that Brexit will create friction to trade that does not exist today. This will have an impact on value chains, which are currently closely integrated across national borders of European countries. And this will impact, in particular, manufacturing and logistics, as well as the agriculture and food sectors. The cost of Brexit will be substantially higher for the UK than for the EU, but Brexit, ladies and gentlemen, is clearly a lose-lose situation for both. On both sides of the channel, businesses, including subsidiaries of US firms, should analyze their exposure to the other side and be ready, when necessary, to adapt their logistical channels, supply chains, and existing contracts. They should also prepare for the worst-case scenario of a no deal, which would result in the return of tariffs under WTO rules. To be clear, the no deal is clearly not my perspective. By the way, you would not need a negotiator for no deal. Huh? We are negotiating to avoid the no deal, but it can still not be excluded. Our objective is to reach an agreement by October on the UK's orderly withdrawal from the EU. This would allow proper time for the British and European parliaments to vote on the withdrawal agreement before the UK actually leaves the EU on the end of March 2019. Over the last few months, we have made progress in the negotiations, in particular. As you can see in this public document, all the text in green, more or less 80% of the draft treaty I've proposed 6 weeks ago, all the text in green is agreed with the UK. We reached a deal to protect 4.5 million European citizens in the UK and British nationals in the EU. We agreed with the Brits that all decisions taken at 28 will be financed at 28. And we agreed on a transition period of 21 months during which the economic status quo between the EU and the UK will be maintained. It will give businesses more time to adapt and also administrations. However, a number of major issues remain open. In particular, we need to find solutions for the difficult issue, the very difficult issue of Ireland and Northern Ireland. Historically, alongside other partners such as the US, the EU has played an important role in supporting the peace process in Ireland. And the key feature of the peace process was to make the border between Ireland and Northern Ireland invisible. This was facilitated, obviously, by the fact that both Ireland and Northern Ireland were part of the EU. We need to avoid our border, and the UK has committed to this. And at the same time, we need to preserve the integrity of our single market. Ladies and gentlemen, we want an ambitious future relationship with the UK, not only in trade, but also in police and judicial cooperation, foreign policy, security and defense. However, the basis for such a cooperation between the UK and the 27 EU countries will necessarily be different. Therefore, the level of integration we have to be lower than it is today. Because what the single market creates is the most developed form of free trade among sovereign countries. It is as close as it gets to a domestic market. Since we are in New York, only a few miles away from Wall Street, let me take the example of financial services. Within the EU single market, companies established in the UK can provide the services across the entire European Union. We call it passporting. Many US financial institutions decided to establish the European hub in London to have these passporting rights and to be able to service clients across Europe. And this is made possible by the EU single market, where EU countries are bound by a common framework and in particular by a single rule book, which we have reviewed following the financial crisis to increase the resilience of our financial institutions and markets. And in doing so, we have implemented the G20 roadmap, just as the US did with the Dodd-Frank Act in parallel. By coordinating or centralizing supervision of this single rule book for banks, insurance companies, and financial markets, and by ensuring that the uniform interpretation of the single rule book by the European Court of Justice. Outside of this common ecosystem of regulation, supervision, and enforcement, there cannot be passporting. The UK has all recognized this point, in particular in the Mansion House speech of Mrs. May a few months ago. But the UK still wants continuity. It would want the EU to accept UK standards by means of a system of mutual recognition. The UK needs to understand that the EU cannot accept such mutual market access without all the safeguards that underpin it. It would go against all our objectives. First, ensuring financial stability. 2, protecting investors. 3, securing market integrity. 4, maintaining a level playing field. These objectives would not be reached if financial institutions could passport in the EU and serve clients based on a license by the supervisor of a third country. I do not know of any country in the world, any country, that would accept such a loss of sovereignty. Ladies and gentlemen, that being said, I think that we should have a close relationship with the UK, also in financial services. This is our common interest. And I see a number of ways to achieve this. First, the EU single market is open to third countries, in general, to the US and also to the UK, and it will remain so. In the EU, free movement of capital is open to third countries. As regards market access to provide financial services, the European Council made clear that our future free trade agreement with the UK should include the right of establishment with EU rules applying. Secondly, the EU has a long history of relying on the regulation and supervision of third countries. It is what the G20 calls deference, what you call in the US substituted compliance, and what we call, on our side in EU, equivalence. To date, the EU has adopted more than 200 so-called equivalence decisions, covering more than 30 foreign jurisdictions, including, of course, the US. This integrates financial markets and facilitates the work of financial operators in the EU and the foreign jurisdictions. Today, to be very clear, we are in the EU the most open jurisdiction in the world for financial services. Why would this equivalent system, which works well for the US industry, not work for the UK? Why? Thirdly, in order to draw lessons for the financial crisis and limit the risks in the future, EU countries collectively developed more effective financial regulation and supervision. And we were very happy to do this hand in hand with the UK. I can personally testify it. I was in charge during 5 years for the financial services as a commissioner, and all these regulations, but two, short selling and bonuses, have been adopted in full agreement with the UK during these 5 years. We need to keep this joint regulatory effort in mind and be ready to exchange our ideas for future rules in the context of close and voluntary regulatory cooperation. Here also, we have already a regulatory dialogue with the US. We could build on this experience with the UK. And fourthly, we will of course cooperate with the UK as we do with the US in international fora, such as the Financial Stability Board or the Basel Committee. The world of finance is global and interdependent. We have a mutual interest in working together, not separately. One thing is clear, ladies and gentlemen, we will not change who we are as a European Union because the UK is leaving. The EU is and will remain the most open market in the world. No other jurisdiction operates a framework that is more open, comprehensive, and rules-based for foreign jurisdictions. US companies are well aware of this. Many of them have been able to take a leading role in EU markets. Let me conclude. Thank you for your attention. Let me conclude very clearly. I want to be graphic. Open markets for financial services are an asset for the EU and will remain so in the future. Thank you very much for your attention. So, I have to be equipped.
Yes, sir.
It's okay?
Yeah. And we can put this in your inside pocket.
Okay, perfect. Okay, thank you very much. I take this chair.
All yours.
Right. You are just in front of the European flag, yeah?
And you're in front of the American flag.
No problem, no problem.
Globalization.
No problem.
Well, thank you, Mr. Barnier, for joining us. There's some fascinating insights there onto the financial services sector, which I know we're all very interested in here. I want to come back to those in a minute. And first, I just want to quickly ask you for your reflections on some of the craziness that took place over the weekend. As we've already heard, we had a few sort of high-level departures in the British government, but we also had, before that, we had something that looked a little bit like progress of a sort, which was this short statement presenting one view of how Britain might like to see the relationship on goods develop after Britain has withdrawn from the European Union. I just want to ask you, based on what you've read, and I know we're still waiting for the white paper that's supposed to be coming on Thursday, which will give more information, how does what seems to be being proposed map onto your view of what is possible at the moment?
First, I welcome the fact that the UK discuss, the UK governments, with a majority, discuss about the future relations. Let me just precise one point. What I'm negotiating for the moment is the withdrawal agreement. And once again, this document, which is the text of this withdrawal agreement, is public, including the green. So you can check every and each point where we agreed already with the Brits, 80%. But we are speaking only of the separation issues. I have no personal experience in divorce, but many friends of mine have, unfortunately, that experience, and it's always costly and unpleasant. So we try to solve the separation issues and to find the way to rebuild certainty where the Brexit has created a huge uncertainty. And first of all, for 4.5 million citizens, residents on both sides, and the financial settlement. On the side of this treaty, if everything goes well, if we reach an agreement for the 20% which remain, we'll publish with the UK a common political declaration, not a treaty, but a political declaration describing the future relations. So that means that signing this treaty, the member state on our side, the European Parliament, which will have the last word, and the British side, everybody will be able to know what will happen after, what will be the perspective, what will be this future and strong partnership. And we are beginning to work with the UK on the scope of this partnership. This is the reason why this 3-page of declaration on Friday night, but more than that, the white paper is welcome. And we will check and evaluate this white paper on 2 points: the workability of the solutions proposed by the UK, in particular for customs, and the second point, are this proposal in line with our guidelines, with our principles. I just mentioned in my speech, we are not ready to change or to unravel what we have built for 60 years and with the UK during 44 years.
Do you think when you...
So there is 2 issues where I think that we have now to begin to intensify our negotiation, our discussion with the UK. The free trade agreement we have proposed already in March, the 27 head of states, clearly, and custom arrangements.
So when you talk, when Theresa
But
May...
I need to be clear, I've always been serious and very precise in this negotiation. Nobody can prevent me to speak about Europe with passion, but as far as Brexit is concerned, the reason, the legal facts, the legal base, no passion, no emotion. So I need to read carefully the white paper.
Right. When Theresa May talks about red lines, you mentioned the Mansion House speech, and there's this whole idea that Britain had these red lines that it could not cross, and you have this slide that you've shown many times showing the different...
My favorite slide, I just on the
outcomes,
chair.
which I think is on everyone's chair.
You can look at it. There is no
Take
copyright.
it home, laminate it.
This one.
And this shows what's possible and what's made impossible by these red lines that Britain has previously talked about, which seem to be kind of softening. What are your red lines? And just as Britain seems to be softening its red lines, could Europe also soften some of its red lines?
But let me clarify one point. We are not, obviously, in a usual negotiation. We are not speaking only about trade. It's not a big bargaining. The single market is not to be compromised and to be negotiated. And the key points, and I work in respecting clearly the mandate given by me by the head of state of the Union, is clear. Integrity of the single market, it was the key point of my speech, including the financial services. The 4 freedoms. 4 freedom means that we have, for a long time in the single market, the freedom of movement for people, for goods, for services, and for capital. These 4 freedoms are indivisible. And the last and the key point is also for the UK to respect our autonomy of decision, as we are ready to respect their wish or their will to regain their sovereignty. I want to respect all the red lines of the UK. But the fact that the UK, if you look this slide, I put on one side with the national flags the different model of cooperation we have already with third country, from the most integrated to the last integrated. And on the other side, I put the red line for the UK, their red lines, not our red lines. They don't want to follow the regulatory framework. They want to diverge when it is their interest. They don't want to respect the freedom of movement for the people. I'm not speaking about migration. Huh? I'm speaking of EU citizens, not migration. Huh? They don't want to respect the role of the Court of Justice. They don't want to pay. They don't want to be part of our trade policy. If you add all these red lines, their red lines, they close themselves the door. This is the point. But each of these models is available. And the stairs, you can go down, you can climb up. Huh? And we are ready to work on any of these models, including Norway Plus, which means we part of the single market plus a custom union. Mm-hmm. I'm ready. But that means that the UK have to change their red lines.
So what they're proposing at the moment, and again we're waiting for the white paper, but seems closest to me, correct me if I'm wrong here, with close to the Swiss agreement, which is basically goods, but it would divide those four freedoms.
No, it's not correct, because the Swiss are respecting the freedom of movement. Huh?
Right, that's the point. So if Britain is not doing that, does that mean the deal will not work?
You saw all the models, huh?
Yep.
And the Brits know perfectly what is the balance of right and obligation for each of these models. So,
but those are the models that are available. If it's not on that slide, it's not happening.
The models available are on this slide now.
Got it.
What cannot be possible, to be clear, to more specific on your question, it will not possible to build a partnership for the UK with the advantages of the Norwegian regime and the constraints of the Canadian regime. No way.
So nowhere in Friday's document was the word finance, I don't think. I think financial services wasn't discussed. You've mentioned it today, and I'd like to know more about this, because you talked about equivalence, which is basically respecting each other's rules as being equivalent, allowing companies to operate as if they were in one kind of common market. Are you saying that passporting, as you defined it today, is not available for Britain without all of those four freedoms being?
I think it was clear. Huh?
Okay, just check it. I'm triple checking that there is no passporting. But equivalence.
Leaving the single market means that you lose the passport. Huh? It's clear.
And what is the process then of achieving equivalence? How long does that take? What are the...
Around this table, Olivier Gerson is with me today, and for the meeting tomorrow in Washington with the minister of the new administration of Donald Trump. He used to be my head of cabinet during 5 years. Now he's in charge as a director general in the Commission for the Financial Services. And I've mentioned the huge number of 200 equivalence decisions we have taken with many US institutions and many Japanese institutions. Huh? What I said is clearly that what works with the US has to work obviously with the UK. Huh?
Well, yes, except that
So we will check the reality of this equivalence. I just want to mention that equivalence are unilateral decisions taken by us towards UK institutions and taken by UK towards EU institutions. And we are able in any time to withdraw this equivalence decision if there is a risk for the financial stability. Ladies and gentlemen, I have been the commissioner, European Commissioner from 2010 until 2014. It was so difficult because of the crisis to rebuild the financial stability. And many of you are businessmen involved as stakeholders in the financial services. You know that the base of any trust, any capacity of investment is the stability, the financial stability. Mm-hmm. If we come back, in any case, to the situation of 2008 and 2009, with this general volatility and stability, nothing is possible. Nothing in Europe and nothing between Europe and the United States. So we will take no risk for the financial stability. So we have to be sure of the reality, the sincerity of this equivalence decision.
One of the stability is obviously very important, and the Bank of England has, as you know, has expressed some concerns that if there is a break between two systems, it could cause huge problems, in particular for the derivatives market. That was the one that Mark Carney was worrying about.
But remember, who is leaving?
Right. I'm not saying that this was not self-inflicted turbulence, but turbulence it is nonetheless. So the question is...
I've been never aggressive in this negotiation, and I will never be. But the fact is the UK is leaving. Mm-hmm. It is a sovereign decision of the UK. And that creates a problem we have to solve. In Ireland, for instance, it is crystal clear that it is the more sensitive consequences, negative consequences of Brexit, and everywhere. So the people who decide to leave have to assume the consequences.
Right.
At this point. Huh?
Do you think that the equivalence kind of arrangement that you talked about, in your experience of the 200 similar agreements that Europe already has, would it even be possible to construct something along those lines in the time that we at the moment have, which is about 8 months till March, and then a further, I think, 21 months until the end of the transition period?
My answer is yes.
You think it's possible?
Yes. Yes, for one reason, which is the same for trade. Contrary of all the previous trade agreement we have negotiated for 50 years with 60 countries in the world. The point with all and each of these countries was to create the base of a facilitated trade and to converge, to encourage a convergence between the norms and the standards, between this country, Japan, Canada, Korea. In the case of UK, it's exactly the contrary. The point when we will be in the negotiation for the trade agreement will be to avoid the divergence, not to encourage the convergence. So this is a bad face of the matter. The good face is that we are today at the same level. Huh? So to build a system of equivalence decision, it will be easier than in other cases. Because we are on the same level today.
If I can just put to you, though, the specific concerns that the Bank of England has are that it would be fairly easy for Europe to say, you know, leave aside the longer-term working arrangement, but it would be easy for them to at least put a kind of grandfathering agreement in or some kind of standstill that stopped a huge dislocation in the derivatives markets. And the feeling from London seems to be that,
who is leaving the EU?
Understood, but the feeling it seems to be that you're kind of weaponizing.
I can repeat the question. Huh? Who is leaving the EU? Who has taken the risk of fragmentation? Who?
But who bears the pain of a chaotic Brexit?
It is a loser's game. Huh? It is a loser's game. So my task and my role is to protect the interests of the 27. Huh?
Got it.
So I will do that. Huh? You can be sure. So we have taken no risk with the fragmentation. Huh? But we will be able, with the services of Olivier, to build this system of equivalence decision on the objective base as quickly as possible, as we did with the United States. Huh?
So when you talking a bit about your mandate,
yes.
What is a job well done for you at the end of this process? What will be a sign that you've achieved what you wanted to achieve?
Just to agree on the 20% which remain, the most difficulties remains. Huh? The governance of the withdrawal agreement, the Irish case, to find an operational solution for Ireland and Northern Ireland, and, if I may, some other separation issues. Huh? Mm-hmm. None of them is negligible. Huh? The point is to finalize this agreement in October, perhaps November, and to put on the side of this agreement, this treaty, a political declaration as precise as possible to describe the scope of the future relations. So, and after, second stage, we will have to succeed to the ratification process of this treaty. I recall that we have to get the agreement of the Council and the Parliament. The reason why I work with the European Parliament and the 27 member states so closely, in a very unusual manner for the Commission, with a total transparency. And we will have to get the agreement of the British Parliament. And at the same time, we will continue the discussion and after the negotiations of the future relations. Because if you look one of my slides, you will find what could be, it could be useful for many of you, the architecture of the future relations in 4 pillars. Just have to find it.
This slide, right?
This one. 4 pillars. This is the proof that when I speak about ambitious partnership, it will be the case. 4 pillars of cooperation with a third country, a very important third country, trade and economy, specific agreements, internal security, external security, and defense. What is in green means that we need, for each of these issues, new and specific negotiation because the UK leaves. I will take one example, very concrete. You know, obviously, that at the European level, for the 28, we manage all the sky issues together. The landing authorization, takeoff authorization, the time, the working time of the pilot, the certification of the planes, what we call the single sky. It is a federal management. UK is leaving. Legally speaking, UK is leaving the single sky. That means 2 things. One, we must have an agreement between UK and EU just for the British Airlines planes to be authorized to land or to take off, and our Air France or Lufthansa. The same spirit. And at the same time, UK will have to negotiate by its own all the new agreements with US, Canada, China, Japan for the British planes. Just to tell you how this decision is complex and has so many consequences. Leaving the EU in March next year, the UK will leave in the same time mechanically, legally speaking, 750 international agreements. All the trade agreements we have signed in the name of the EU, and many other agreements with third partners, third countries. 750 international agreements. So that is the point of this second pillar, internal and external security. And that is the point of this ambitious partnership.
Do you have a plan for, or are you drawing up a...
That means just to conclude, to be clear, all this negotiation will require several tables of discussion with the UK. And we have to translate the discussion in new treaties or new agreements. It is obvious that many, and perhaps all these new agreements will be mixed agreement. Legally speaking, that means that we will require the ratifications of the 27 national parliaments by unanimity in Europe. It's not the case of the withdrawal agreement. It will be the case for the future relations. So the reason why we have, I don't know what my mission will end, is the decision of the head of states, but the totality of the process will only end when the totality of these new agreements will be effectively ratified and operational.
Have you drawn up a plan for what happens if there is no agreement? Like
Yes.
to minimize the disruption? Because
Yes.
financial markets, again...
Yes.
So are you confident that you'll be able to contain that disruption?
We have today two lines of preparedness. For instance, first of all, in any case, because of the Brexit, we have to prepare ourselves. Mm-hmm. I was two weeks ago in Schiphol Airport in Netherlands to meet the new teams, the young people, training to become custom officers. Netherlands has created 700 new posts of custom officer. France 1,000. Belgium 400. That means in any case, and in the case of a deal, and I'm working for a deal, we have huge change. It cannot be business as usual. We will have to control the products. To be clear, if you look at my stair slide, the only frictionless relation with UK is important also for US firms in London or everywhere else in Europe. The only frictionless relation would be Norway plus, which is possible. Mm-hmm. Being part of the single market, outside of the EU, Norway is outside, but part of the single market, plus a custom union. It is the only frictionless relation. In all the other cases, we will have to face controls. And in addition, we are preparing ourselves to the worst, which would be the no deal. Huh?
Does that mean you'd be prepared to help financial institutions that were in Europe
yes.
that faced?
But the financial institution can already look at the website of the Commission. We have already published 62 of 70 notices for each sector to be prepared.
So I have two more quick questions, then I'm going to open it up to questions. One question is, Donald Tusk, President of the European Council, yesterday tweeted, as you mentioned, he tweeted, if only when politicians go, their views go with them, or something along those lines, referring to Boris Johnson and David Davis, and then left open this kind of tantalizing suggestion that maybe, who knows, maybe Brexit might just evaporate as a concept in Britain. Now, is there actually any realistic scenario where things could go back to how they were before the Brexit referendum in Britain?
Just let me recall that I am working day after day under the mandate of the European Council chaired by Mr. Tusk and the 27 head of states. And I take part, invited by Mr. Tusk, every 3 months to the European Council, last Friday, to report to the European Council where we are, the state of play. Everything is possible from now to March for the membership of the Union. And everything will remain possible for the membership of the single market, the customs union, between March and the end of 20. It is the UK decision. But to be clear and precise, legally speaking, the process of this negotiation has been launched unilaterally by the UK. It is a sovereign decision of the UK citizens. The government has decided to leave the union, to leave the single market, and to leave the customs union. And Mrs. May sent us a letter in March 17. And she decided herself, sending this letter, the date of the withdrawal, 2 years after, March 19. Any change, in this process require a decision by unanimity, the 27 plus 1. Everything is possible, but any change on the process between now and the conclusion of the negotiation in March, and sooner in October or November, any change will require a decision by 27 plus 1.
So does that makes me think that some of the special deals that Britain had before, budget rebates, sort of carve-outs from certain things, would no longer be available? So we wouldn't actually go exactly back to how we were before, even if we went back to how we were before.
I don't understand your question.
So Britain would have to re-enter on the terms that anyone would enter the European Union, following the same principles, with all of the same perks and pitfalls.
No, I don't want to speak. Generally speaking, I don't like the speculation, and I don't want to speculate.
Okay.
I take the things one by one. Today, I do not see the political condition for such a decision today.
Okay.
And I'm working to reach a deal on the withdrawal agreement as the UK asked for, and to prepare this political declaration and to launch discussion about the future relations after.
Got it. And then finally, just David Davis, who of course was the Minister for Brexit effectively in Britain. There was a story going around a few days ago that you and he had only spent 4 hours in each other's company.
very
this year?
intense hours.
Okay, very intense hours. So I was going to say, well, first of all, is it true? And secondly, if you weren't talking to him, who are you talking to on a day-to-day basis on the British side?
But let me just say a few words about what happened last night and yesterday morning. I never comment the political situation in UK. Never. It's not my job. I'm the EU negotiator. I follow the political situation in UK, the political life. I receive many people, including Mr. Farage and some others. It's always very stimulating. But I don't want to comment what happened in the political life in UK. We have now new ministers, and they will work next Monday. I will work with the team of negotiators appointed by Mrs. May. It is not a problem for me, huh? Not a problem. And these people are competent. I can tell you, we are working on a more weekly basis with the advisor of Mrs. May for Europe, for the Robins, and with many high civil servants of UK. These people are very professional and very competent.
Great. So, questions?
The same for us, huh?
Competent, naturally.
And professional. The same for my team.
Do we have a... Do we have a microphone? It's at the back of the room. So if you can say who you are and keep it to one question, that would be great.
Yep, Peter Coy from Bloomberg Businessweek magazine. If the UK decided to have a second referendum on Brexit, would the EU consider extending the deadline past next March?
I just answer, and I will just repeat my answer, that everything is possible. I don't want to speculate. I don't see the political condition for such a decision. But if there is a change from the UK side on the process of the leaving, this 27 member states will have to give their the agreement by unanimity. I can answer something else. Huh?
Tony Zobel with AIG. I'm wondering at this juncture, kind of regardless of the outcome of the negotiations, do you think you're in a position to say that your recommendation to maybe the Council or the Parliament would be that Article 50 needs to be built out a bit more and a more clear roadmap needs to be developed as part of the Article 50 process? Or are you happy with the current structure in terms of the roadmap for countries exiting the EU?
The roadmap for, no, just to understand your question, because
Yeah. No, I'm just wondering if my understanding is there is no clear roadmap for countries to exit the EU. There's no clear detail on how to do that. But based on your experience thus far, would you say that some kind of detail and roadmap in quotations would be advisable for the future?
it's clear that in the case, because it's the first time, and to be frank, I will do everything I can for this exit to be the last one, or the only one. But obviously, we will have to draw the lessons of this process, huh, in any case. But it works, huh? It works. So we have been able, in less than 1 year, to publish and to propose to the UK the draft treaty. Huh? And I'm not speaking about a speech. If you look at this document, it's public. It is the treaty, the final treaty for exit of the UK. 168 articles, 2 protocols. It is a legal base with legal certainty. So we are working well. Huh?
So could this be the template for a future exit of another country from Europe?
Yes. But but I will do everything that nobody will have the you look at the debate in UK, huh? Look, no comment.
You're going to make it so horrible
No.
that no one will ever do this again.
To be clear, I regret this vote. Let me just recall one point to understand my personal feeling. I was in France 21 when the French president organized a referendum in France in 72. You can calculate my age. Huh? At that time, we had a referendum in France for the accession of UK, Norway, Denmark, and Ireland. And the French people vote. I was already a member of the Gaullist party in France, and I campaigned for the yes. It was my very first vote as a French citizen, and I never regret this vote. The reason why I regret the UK decision to leave. So never you will find in my attitude any kind of feeling of punishment, of revenge. No, never, I can tell you. So I regret this vote. I try to be objective and to do my job, which is to protect the integrity of the single market and to protect the interest of the 27 and to find the best way to cooperate with the UK on the long term. My conviction is still the same, and I told you my conviction at the very first sentence of my speech. In the current world, facing so many challenges, it's better to be together than alone. I'm sure of that.
There's a gentleman here.
Hi, Helen Corbett from DPA, German press agency. I saw that you met yesterday with the European diplomats from the UN. I was wondering how you see...
I'm
Do you
sorry,
hear?
but I don't.
Okay. How do you see the cooperation at the UN between the European countries and Britain going forward?
It is one of the reasons why I'm here in New York for 2 days and this evening in Washington, just to speak with the European ambassadors I met yesterday morning and some other key actors in the UN to find the best way to cooperate. You use the word of cooperation is the right word. We need to find, in the framework of our future relationship, the fourth pillar, if you look at my slide, it's about cooperation in defense, external security, and foreign policy. And obviously, UK will remain a key actor on defense matters, being a member of the Council of Security, due to the very effective and efficient network of diplomacy all around the world. It is a common interest of the UK and EU to work together at the level of the UN. So we will find, and we are working with the High Representative, Federica Mogherini. We are working very precisely to find the right way to cooperate. Cooperation does not mean co-decision, no? But cooperation will be strong and necessary.
Thank you very much. Paul Sheard from S&P, formerly from S&P Global. Could you say a little bit more, Mr. Barnier, and thank you very much for your very enlightening comments this morning and also at lunch, but could you say a little bit more about the political declaration that is going to be part of the agreement, hopefully in October? How does that fit in? What is its significance? How will that be arrived at? Is it specifically and only about the future future economic relationship, political relationship?
No.
Where does it fit in? And a little bit more about that.
The declaration will be complete and very precise on every and each issue of the future relation with UK. Look, if I may to understand what I mean. Take the time to look at what are the guidelines of the European Council last March. 10 pages or 12 pages, very precise. It is our offer. And the UK will respond next Thursday by their proposals. It is a normal and legitimate dialogue for the negotiation of this declaration. But I start from my side from the guidelines of the Council, very precise, offering to the UK an ambitious free trade agreement, taking into account their red lines. The model of a free trade agreement could be more, depends on the UK, plus specific cooperation, for instance, for aviation, but also using our policies, UK leaves. But we have already tools in our toolbox, sorry, for third countries. We have the tools, the current tools for cooperation with third country, for instance, for university cooperations, research cooperations, Erasmus. We use this tool with Norway, Switzerland, Israel, and we are obviously ready to use them with UK. And third pillar will be about internal security, judicial and police cooperation, and the last one about defense and security, just as mentioned. So it will be very precise, and the goal, the aim of this political declaration is just for everybody, but in particular for the head of states who will sign this treaty. The European Parliament will have to vote on one side, the British stakeholders, the British Parliament, to know where we are going after. And for me, as a negotiator, to have the right base for the further negotiation. That I will work from October or November on the base of this declaration and launch several tables of negotiations, because once again, the time will be very short. From October or November, 3 months of ratification of this treaty. During this time, I use the time to accelerate the discussion and negotiation, and after only 21 months to conclude. So, but my work as a negotiator will be facilitated, and for the UK negotiator, the same, by this declaration and the precisions of these declarations.
So is that to say that the declaration is sort of it tells you your mandate for the next phase? It's a statement of intent. Here are the things we want to negotiate about.
It's really the base, yes.
But it's not binding. It doesn't necessarily create the outcomes that it.
As I already said, I don't know yet if we'll use one global vote, the proposal of the Parliament, association agreement, or several agreements, dealing or negotiating free trade agreement is obviously different than negotiating an agreement on aviation or on defense and security. So we will have several table negotiations, perhaps several different agreements or treaties. Each of these treaties will require the vote of the 27 national parliaments in the EU and even regional parliaments, if I look what happened with the CETA agreement. So it will be very challenging, and we have to prepare. The reason why, just to explain to you how I work with my team, 60%, and plugged on all the DGs of the Commission. I work with the member states on a daily basis, and I visit one capital per week in the EU, meeting the Prime Minister, the head of state, the national parliament of this country, the trade unions, and the business community, just to explain and for everybody to be involved, because this negotiation is extraordinary. It cannot be secret. It needs public debate. It is one of the key reason to succeed all the steps of this long process until the end. That means until the ratification of the future relation with UK.
We have time for one last very quick question, if anyone has one.
Please. We can stay longer, but we have a very important appointment, a Franco-Belgian appointment.
Anthony Soranko, Fredericks Michael.
Game.
You expressed multiple times your regret regarding the decision in favor of Brexit. There were delegations from Paris and Frankfurt representing senior bankers over the past year here in New York that expressed excitement about the opportunities for Paris and Frankfurt. How does that impact the negotiation dynamic, if at all?
How this? Just repeat your question.
Sure. How does the excitement of Paris and Frankfurt with respect to their opportunities in the financial sector, how does that impact the negotiation dynamic, if at all?
I don't know if these bankers are exciting. I don't really understand what means exciting. but it would not be the first time I will not agree with some bankers. Huh?
I don't think this is the bankers, though. This is like Paris getting excited
Yes,
because
yes,
BlackRock is moving its staff there. Bank of America is moving its staff from London to Paris.
It will be
There's
not the
certainly some
first
winners,
time that I disagree with some bankers in Europe. Huh? So
Yeah.
there is many consequences for the Brexit. I try to deal and to manage these consequences and perhaps some opportunities, but I will try to build the best relation with UK, but I don't want to speak in the name of these bankers. Huh? So the point for me is just to repeat here in New York to you as US stakeholders that we will remain a key player in the world, 440 million consumers, 22 million businesses in the same single market. That means that all these people respect the same standards, the same norms, the same rules, the same supervision, the same regulation, the same certification. And for US business, it will remain the case to be able, entering this market, to have one set of rules and not 27 set of rules. That is the point. We will remain a key player and a global market in the world. I think the reason why I still hope that we will be able in the next few years to build or to rebuild these transatlantic trade relations, which is, in my view, in the common interest of US and UK and EU.
Mr. Barnier, thank you very much. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. I hope it was okay.